Welcome to the first ever Military Trumpet Jobs podcast. I'm Kevin Paul. I'm a trumpet player with the United States Army Band, one of the creators of MTJ, and an auditions coordinator for the Army Band. We have three awesome guests with us for our first ever podcast. Chris Buckley is a euphonium player with the United States Army Band. He's also the auditions coordinator. We have Matt Misener, trumpet player in the United States Air Force Band, who's also an auditions coordinator. And Ryan Beach, principal trumpeter of the Alabama Symphony, adjunct trumpet professor at UNA, and the creator of That's Not Spit, It's Condensation. Thank you all for joining us.
So the reason I'm here on this podcast is to act as a facilitator, to ask some questions related specifically to military band auditions, because while they're similar to orchestral auditions, they are a little bit different. There's a little bit different process and, some different excerpts and things like that. So we thought we'd come together, people with a lot of experience, both taking auditions and listening to auditions, to just have a conversation, to give you listening to this podcast just a sense of what you could expect and why you should be interested in doing it. So to get started, and I'm just going to open it up. Anybody can jump in. Whoever wants to jump in to start with. Why should someone consider auditioning for a military band position? And just what are some of the opportunities that exist? There's lots of different types of bands, to my knowledge. I just love for you to go into detail about that.
Sure, I'll start. So for me, it's just a great opportunity. I play euphonium, so I don't have all of the orchestral symphony positions that trumpet players have. And when I was going through school, I was getting my doctorate, and I wanted to teach college. And if that didn't work out, I was going to teach middle school because I like teaching it. And it was just an opportunity, a job that pays me to play euphonium. It pays really well with amazing benefits in one location. And I just really lucked out winning the job when I won it. So I recommend it. So it's not for everybody, but definitely it's working out for me.
I always say to people, take an audition because you want to. Make sure that it's a great opportunity to be in a military band, but make sure that that's something that you want to do. Not everyone's going to fit with every group. And to really analyze who you are and what you want to get out of your career, and then rank things. Where do you see yourself? A lot of us shoot for being the principal trumpet of the New York Philharmonic, but there's only one chair as principal trumpet of the New York Philharmonic. So a lot of people take auditions, but make sure you want to take the audition you're taking. So and look into this. Part of this podcast is kind of maybe breaking open some dark areas when it comes to what you might not know about auditioning for military band, but then what it's like actually doing the job for a military band. Make sure it's something you want to do and investigate the process.
Yeah, I mean, I concur with all those things. To piggyback kind of off those things, some of the most meaningful jobs, like performances, ceremonies I've ever done have been in the military. So it's a very meaningful job. It's not for everyone. I wanted to talk about some of the opportunities. There's, premier bands, there are regional bands, which are full-time active duty jobs. So I want to say the Army is the largest employer of musicians in the world. So we have about, I don't know the exact number, it changes all the time, but about 90 military bands worldwide. So we also have like reserve and National Guard bands. And I encourage everyone to go to Go Army and kind of see what those opportunities are, goarmy.com. And there's a band tab and it has all of those listed. So even if a colleague of Ryan's is the professor at UNA. So he does that. And he's also in a reserve band or reserve or guard band. So he does that, every month. So he's able to kind of serve and have his full-time teaching job. It's just food for thought.
Yeah, before we move on, I wanted to ask the question because I believe both Chris and Kevin said there are great opportunities, but it's not for everyone. So, Chris, can you just share a little bit what you might mean by it's not for everyone, or maybe what kind of person is this not for?
Yeah, I mean, so I always say like the Venn diagram of people that can join the military is getting smaller and smaller. So you have to be in moderate health so that you can go through basic training. You have to be able to pass a physical examination. you don't have to be an Olympic athlete. I could run fine. I didn't run fast or anything, but you have to be in a certain body type within a certain height and weight. And that's part of looking good in a uniform. So that part is not for everybody. Maybe if somebody has some medical conditions that might disqualify you, just things that you can't get around, some certain medications or things. So that's the main thing. I mean, and one thing that's really different between a premier band and the other bands or bass bands is that we're in a permanent duty station. So we stay in one location for our entire career, which is an amazing, pro that we get to stay in one place. And the other bands are also awesome, full of awesome players. I'll also mention the Navy fleet bands. There's really great players in those fleet bands, but they move around every 3 or 4 years. So
I see.
Yeah, in the Air Force, we have a similar program. We have 2 premier bands, the one here in D.C. and also our Academy band, and they're permanent station bands. So if you win the audition there, you'll join that group. You won't move. But then we also have our regional bands, which we have here in the United States, one in Europe and then one in Asia, which actually is stationed in Japan. And although they don't move all that much, because I think unlike the Army, those in the Air Force, those bands audition per position, just like the premier bands. But one of the things we should say about the premier bands is we get advanced rank to generically E6. That means something different for every service, but the pay grade is E6. Whereas in the regional bands, you'll come in at about an E2. If you have some advanced education, they might give you E3. That's something to consider as well. You could move if you're in one of those regional bands. But a lot of times with some of our regional bands in the Air Force, they don't actually move around too much. They stay with one band for a pretty long period of time.
Great. Yeah, that's really helpful information just to consider for sure. One thing I do want to talk about, but not right now, we're going to probably try to slot it at the end, is just basic training, what that's like, because I also know there's a couple of ensembles that don't have to do basic training. I just think it might be worth covering that because I'm sure that's a question people have. But to stay on the audition track, Kevin, I'll give it to you. Can we talk about some similarities between orchestra auditions and military band auditions, and then maybe some of the differences between those two types of auditions?
I recently took an audition for the Richmond Symphony, which I was grateful. You helped me a lot with that one, Ryan. So I know that all 3 rounds for that Richmond Symphony audition were blind, behind a screen. And our auditions are very modeled very similarly, where we have three rounds and they're all screened with a proctor. So each had a proctor. So I would say there's, a similar size list to both. One pertaining to band excerpts, orchestral excerpts. The differences between the two are the taped auditions. So to get more into the weeds on taped auditions, I kind of want to get a little bit on a soapbox about that. So, about 100 to 130 people take a taped audition. So we had one, I'll say couple of years ago, we had 134 tapes, and probably about 40 of them were people that really spent the time to really record everything. A lot of people just kind of didn't edit all the way. They put walking in there. They talked in it. They the quality of audio. They left mistakes so they put 2 takes in there, but I forgot to edit the first part of it out. It's okay to edit, but this is to an extent, trimming the front end, the back end, making sure that you're not peaking the audio, making sure that you don't hear someone speaking or swearing, or say your name on there. So there's a lot of private information. We want this to be as blind as possible. When we get a submission, Chris strips all the PI, we number all of them, and we send them to the panel to listen to. This goes for all instruments.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in there, so to help anyone listening to this, just really make sure what you're sending in is your best representation of your playing. And like Kevin said, I feel maybe some people didn't listen to it all the way through. Maybe some people, they're amazing players, they're great players, but they have a couple mistakes in there, and they just said, it's fine. And so unfortunately, they might not get invited, and they might be surprised why they didn't get invited. It's like, well, there's some mistakes on there, or sometimes big ones. We've had people send in videos, and I ask them that we do everything as blind as we can, as much as we can, to protect the candidates auditioning. So, and you can see them they're in their bedrooms with dirty clothes all over the place. They're wearing dirty clothes, and I'm not judging them. You know, I can't accept it. I asked them to just send in like audio, but definitely you don't want to put that out there. You don't want to send that in to somebody. So just really make sure that your teacher's listening to your recording, your buddies are listening to your recording, play it for each other, send it to your buddies. Hey, what do you think of this? Should I redo it? Is that good enough? You know, really put some extra time into it.
Yeah, at the Air Force Band, we've done a lot of conversations, especially involving DEI, how we can make the audition a more fair process. And so we blind our tape round as well. And we just had an audition. We had 103 submissions. And I think what might be helpful for people to understand is that we're trying to get that 103 tapes that were being sent down to roughly 50 that we can invite to the audition. And there's logistical reasons why we have to do this. We can only hear about 50 to 55 people in a single day. And our building where we have our auditions is full of ensembles rehearsing, getting ready for video products. It's very difficult to find a day where I can book enough rooms in our building to have an audition. If I have to book a second day for that audition, say we invited all 103 candidates, there's no way we could get through all those candidates in a single day. That makes it so much more difficult logistically for our building. So even though we would like to invite that many people, logistically we can't. So if your tape doesn't end up being in the top 45, 50% of tapes being sent in, you're probably not going to be invited. We'd love to invite you, but logistically, we just don't have the time. So you really need to make a tape that's as high quality as you possibly can, understanding that making a tape means buying equipment, spending time. Years ago, I was invited to the principal trumpet opening in Boston Symphony. And I actually got through back then the CD round when you actually had to send in a real physical CD. 26 of us were invited. We all got cut in the preliminary round, but they had invited people to the semifinals and finals. But I always tell people there were 6 excerpts on that recording, and I had for the 6 excerpts, I had 240 takes of 6 excerpts before I sent in that CD. That's the kind of quality you need to be thinking about when you're sending in a taped product.
Wow. Yeah. We all have similar stories like that. And it's basically, we can't hire based on perceived talent. Like, so when you have 2 months to record something, is this your best take? Is this your best version of you? So you don't have to be in a mega church. You don't have to have like a Royer 122, which is a $2,000 microphone. There are certain, like they're the cheapest possible way. Like there's like these attachments that you can put into your phone for like a very small price. Like there's like Zoom, or Shure mics that you can put in your phone. You can edit with free software like Audacity. There's Reaper, there's GarageBand. There's so many ways to make a really good quality version of yourself on a tape to send in. It's your business card. I would encourage anyone listening to this to spend the time, the money, and the effort to make great quality excerpts. You could send out to a church, you can send out to a school or a festival, a military band. Most of the excerpts that are required for these I say CDs or tapes, but they're really MP3s now, are the same. If you just spend all that time recording yourself throughout the audition process, where you're basically trying to work up this audition, you're getting better, and you always have those in the can. So when something pops up, it's awesome. You have it ready to go.
And if I could just throw in a tip for, we get questions like, well, does the the room matter? Does it matter how live it is or how dry it is? And I think if you could just stick with three things, just make sure that you can hear a good tone quality wherever you're playing, that you can hear a good articulation, and not just a good one, but that someone listening to it can tell it's good. They can tell if you can tongue or not. And then the third, make sure that you're playing in rhythm. It's amazing how many recordings of marches you'll get that are completely out of rhythm. So if you just stick with those three things, I don't think it matters exactly how boomy or how dry the room is, but try to get those three things in there.
That's a really good.
Just to piggyback on that, what would really help also is that if there's 3 excerpts on the tape round, try to record those in the same space. We sometimes get takes where there's a really dry excerpt and then there's a really reverberous excerpt, and you kind of know, like, wow, that's really different from excerpt to excerpt. And although we're not trying to judge that, we're really just trying to judge the merits of what you've sent in, it's hard for the committee to think, oh, well, this was somebody just sat down and recorded this, when they're hearing such wildly different acoustics from excerpt to excerpt. So maybe even more, a consistent sound quality excerpt to excerpt can really help tie it together. You should really think about it as a package. You're sending in your resume, but honestly, until you make the final round at our audition, we're not even going to look at your resume. So we're only judging you on the product that you've sent in on the recording. So trying to make that recording as consistent with time, intonation, sound, and playing the way you play, be the best representation of you when you send it in. That'll really help us make the decision.
So I wanted to include in this, here's a recording of me playing Some of the Heroes for back when I was at Manhattan School of Music. This is the first tape. I had been sending tapes in and beating my head against a wall. I've been rejected so many times up until this point. Finally, so basically I went every day at 6 a.m. when Manhattan School opened, and to the concert hall room, 607. And I would sit there and I'd record on a Zoom, like HQN, one of the older ones. And I would do it. I must have recorded this like 30, 40 times over like a week and a half span. But here, it's not, I hope I'm better. It's not my best playing, but this is, I guess, kind of an example of what was accepted.
So yeah, that's like hopefully this whole discussion about tapes gives you a good example, or at least some information that helps you have more success. And you might think we spent so much time talking about tapes. Why would we spend that much time? But clearly, if that's the first step in the process, and you're, as Matt was saying, having so many people applying, and not even like we're trying to get rid of people, but we really physically can't fit that in there. You want to put your best foot forward. And there's so much great advice that was just shared here. And then again, with Kevin's example, you can see that. So I think that's super important to consider, and I hope it's helpful. I want to now just continue down the process. So what happens when someone's tape is accepted? Take us down the next couple of steps of what they might expect. Chris, I think we'll start with you, if you can kind of just walk us down what someone might expect if they have their tape accepted.
Sure. So for us, we typically ask for these recordings about 8 weeks before the audition, and I give the panel a week to review them, and then they decide how many they're going to invite, and then I send them an email with all the information to how to contact their local recruiter, how to get their travel funded through their recruiter, as long as they can pass MEPS, the medical examination processing station. As long as they can get through that, then they'll have their whole travel funded, their hotel, their flight. And so then they'll have about 7 weeks to go through that. And we tell people to do it as fast as possible. Sometimes people need a waiver. Maybe if they're just over 34 years old, maybe they need an age waiver, or I needed a waiver because I had really thick glasses, and people just need waivers for different things. So yeah, just people go through that, and then they come to the audition.
And I assume sorry, I was going to say, and you can pick this up here, Matt, if you want, or say what you're, but like also within that packet, you're getting a list of 20, 24, however many excerpts to prepare as well. And everybody's getting, that's like a normal audition. You're going to get those same excerpts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For the Air Force, if you go on, if you just Google search Air Force band auditions, all the auditions in all of Air Force bands will come up. And ours is the DC band's right at the top of the page. And if there's an audition for your instrument, if it's trumpet, it'll be on there. And you can look at all of the information on there, including all of the excerpts, both what you need to record and also all the excerpts that will be on the audition. We don't have the cool thing the Army band has, where if you get past the tape round, they'll pay for your travel expenses. In the Air Force, we don't do that. So we typically only leave about 5 weeks in between submission of tapes to the actual audition. But we try to turn that around as soon as possible so people can book travel to DC. And I think in that time, we always encourage people to contact their recruiter to make sure, just going through a general list. I think there's a stigma maybe about calling a recruiter. I think in the past they were a little bit heavy-handed with some sales tactics and so forth for joining the military. I haven't found that to be too true. They're actually there to answer your questions. So if you have questions about the MEPS process or about basic training, or hey, you might have this going on, or maybe you took this medication but you don't take it anymore, and you want to know, hey, do I need a waiver for this? Would I have to, if I win this audition, will I have to wait to get in because I was on this medication? They can answer all of those questions. And if they don't know off the top of their head, they can call and find out, and they'll call you back. And so it's always a good thing to call a recruiter prior to coming to the audition, because if there is something that would unfortunately disqualify you from joining the military, it's much better to find that out before you spend the money to travel to the audition or put in the time to prepare for that audition than afterwards when you've won the job, because it can be pretty devastating if you win the job and then you find out, oh, well, I have this thing and I can't join the military. So it's always a good thing. Don't be afraid to call a recruiter.
Yes, it's one of those things. Like, calling a recruiter is always better safe than sorry. The audition that I won for Pershing's Own was me and one other guy, and as unfortunate, a waiver just didn't get through, and he wasn't able to accept the job. And it's just an unfortunate circumstance and reality with this. Whenever dealing with that.
Yeah, I was going to say I get medical questions all the time, and I always say I can't answer 100%. I do a quick Google search, and I said, here's what I found. And usually the answer is there. And I said, but contact your recruiter and ask them. They'll be able to tell you specifically your medication, or if that's a disqualifying factor or not. And I also wanted to mention that we're kind of lucky. I think every military band wants as many people as possible to audition, whether you're an undergraduate, you're just coming for experience, and then, hey, you get better and you come back when you're finishing your master's. We do a hybrid process where we do both a taped pre-screen, or we do a cattle call. So you can submit a recording and get your travel funded, or anyone can apply and just show up to a live audition. And pretty much the first round is the same music that was recorded in the pre-screen. So we just want as many people as possible to audition. Mm-hmm. So you have 2 ways of trying to audition.
Good, Kevin.
I want you to clarify a question, because this is something we get all the time and it's different. So say you don't get your tape through, you could go and show up to play the first round at your expense. And if you do get your tape, through, you can go through MEPS, have your travel funded. You get to start in the first or second round.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's exactly right. And I when I was a student, I was trying to get better, and I was doing anything I could, sending in recordings, competitions, anything I could afford, right? So if you could drive there, if you can go with some buddies and you all get in a car, if you can all make it to the audition, why not take it? But yeah, that's definitely true. Even if your tape doesn't get accepted, I might tell you, you can still come to the live audition. And for some people that are on the bubble, they were close, I'll say you're strongly encouraged to come to the live audition. Maybe they just didn't send in their best tape. Maybe they were close. So.
And just to clarify, so if your tape gets through, you start in the second round.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
For us, the semifinal, second day. Yeah.
And the clarify from that's a very much an Army band centric.
Right.
The Air Force doesn't quite work that way. And every band, just like every orchestra, is going to have a slightly different process. So whether it be the Marine band or the Navy band or the Coast Guard band or the Air Force band, they're all going to have a slightly different process. So you're going to want to make sure you understand what those processes are before you apply.
Right. Yeah. Marine band is a cattle call the whole way. No one gets auto advanced, even if you're from another band. I know. So I guess I wanted to ask you a question, Matt. So the Air Force band advances blue suiters. You call them blue suits, right? Your regional band.
That's right. It's one of the perks we give our regional bandsmen is that if they meet certain criteria, they need to have been on their actual duty station for a year, and they need to have approval from their commander. But if they meet those requirements, they can audition for a premier band opening, and they'll be auto advanced to the semifinals. And we refer to them as blue suitors because they come in their Air Force blues when they come to audition.
This is great. This stuff I didn't even know. So this is great for me, even just to kind of learn about this part and the differences between the two. So that's the sort of in between. Your tape is accepted or apparently not, and then you have the in between spot. And then now let's talk about the audition day itself. I think we'll go with Kevin first, and then maybe over to Matt, so you could talk about whatever differences are there. But what can someone expect when they show up to the day? Like for orchestra auditions, I've experienced you get put in a room with a whole bunch of other people. You're just sitting around waiting, and then you get your own room 20 minutes beforehand. Is it similar to that, or is there a different process for you?
It's very similar. So the first person they'll greet will be me and Chris, and we'll be in uniform. We'll have a table. There's going to be a rounds list. There's going to be a couple other optional forms to fill out for DEI that help us out greatly. And, we'll be signing them in groups. So we'll have group 1, 2, 3, 4. The panel, Chris will brief the panel. I'll start getting people into their rooms. So everyone have their own individual practice room, a good amount before the audition starts. And when it starts, we try to get people in there so they'll have, 20, 30, 40 minutes, sometimes an hour in a room, their own room with a piano and everything. And they'll know what's going to be on the first round. As the audition kind of goes on, one of us will always be in the room. One of us will be proctoring, and one of us will be running. Be like a runner back and forth. So say I was the runner, I would take the candidate from the practice room and I'd say, hey, I'm ready to go 10 minutes before. I'd walk them down, and then I would take them to the proctor. The previous candidate goes off. The proctor kind of briefs them just to give like a play-by-play here, tells them, please speak to me, whisper to me if you have any, comments or questions. If the panel asks for something over again, I'll act as a sounding board to kind of create total anonymity. We have a carpet on the ground, so there's lots of similarities with orchestral auditions. They'll play the round. After that, they'll go into what we call our day room, our main lobby area. We also have a room with a bunch of chairs where people hang out. And we usually have missions, what we call it, like missions or jobs, rehearsals, things that go on at the same time. And you'll have members of the band there, and there'll be candidates there as well, waiting to get into practice rooms and people who have done their audition. So after that, we have about 10 people in a block, and maybe usually roughly around 10 people. And then after that, Chris will take them out and give them the news of who advanced, thank them for coming. And then we have a liaison who also talks to them about regional band opportunities, Nicole Daly, who's a great resource for anyone. Sergeant First Class Nicole Daly, if you call her and ask her anything, she can also give you a bunch of great advice. And I'll put that in the comments.
How about for you, Matt? Is it a similar process? Are there any differences for the Air Force?
Yeah, very similar process. I think even before they show up to our building, one of the things that has to be discussed is getting onto a military base. We make them send their license if they have it. If they're driving, their license plate, so that we can register them with the community center, which is our 11 security forces, so that they can easily access the base that day if they get on that list. And they can either come in if they're driving, that's fine. If they have a rent-a-car, that's okay too. We can do it through the license, their actual license from their state. And if they're taking an Uber or something like that, we normally run a van every hour up to the visitor center to pick them up and bring them to the band hall. Because it's a little bit of a walk. It's about a mile walk from on the Air Force Base to our building. So we'll have shuttles running back and forth, and I assign people to do that. But once they get to the building, it's very similar. They'll check in. We normally try to run no more than 8 an hour, and that would be your block. I think that's something that people should really consider. When I was in college, I certainly was not an early riser. I go to bed late and I'd wake up late, and military band auditions sometimes start at 8 in the morning. If you're not used to playing your instrument that early in the morning, you might want to consider in the weeks leading up to the audition, setting an early alarm around 6, getting up, doing your normal, whatever you do in the morning, stretching, getting a breakfast, keeping it normal. And then maybe an hour after that, try a warm up and then try to play some excerpts. Like, what does it feel like to play that early in the morning if you're not used to playing that early in the morning? It's actually, I think, a really underrated part of audition prep is conditions of the audition. What if the room's really cold? What if it's really warm? Just simple things that you might not think about, but can really help you in an audition. What time of day are you going to be playing? Just to give anecdotal evidence here, at my audition for the Air Force Band back in 2009, I played for the first time at 9:05 in the morning. That was my first round. My second round was 3:45 in the afternoon, and my final round started at 6:15 that evening. It was a full day of auditioning, and most of the auditions I run for the Air Force Band follow a similar pattern. We start at 8, and I'm not normally out of the building until 8 that night. So it's a long day, and if you're not used to that and you're not prepping for that, it can be a rude awakening. Because you're going to be tired. I mean, it's a process, and you're going to be tired, and you have to prepare for that before you actually get to that day of the audition.
It's a very similar process between our bands and orchestras as well.
Yeah. Well, there is one difference that I'd love, Chris, for you to talk a little bit about, and that's the interview. Because to my knowledge, it's after the semifinal round. At least that's for the Marine Band. My friends that have won job in the Marine Band will say after the semifinal round, there's an interview that happens with the conductor, but maybe you guys have a different name for them than conductor. But I would love for you to talk about that, because this is such a major difference between orchestra and military band auditions. Why is there an interview? What kinds of questions are being asked? And what are they looking for? And how could that affect your viability as a candidate?
Sure. So I know the Marines, like you said, they do it after the semifinal round, where it's usually the assistant conductor. It was Major Nowlin, now Colonel Nowlin, and they want to ask you certain questions similar to what we do. We do ours in the finals, so we have everyone play, and we only judge their playing, and then once they've decided the best player, then they offer them the interview. At that point, they're pretty much hireable. They just need to ask them these basic questions. And the main thing is because we work in DC, we work at the White House, we work at the Pentagon. We're around high profile people, state, and everything. So we do have top secret clearance. So you have to be able to have that clearance to work at the White House. That includes your criminal record, or part of our interview. They're just some basic questions like, do you know exactly what our job is? Why do you want this job? Do you have any hobbies? Just a personal, nice question. Do you have any questions for us? And if we offer you this position today, how soon could you accept it? Maybe someone's under a contract with another orchestra, or usually people are in school and they say, oh, I'd like to finish my degree. And then we have that discussion like, well, we really want to hire someone as soon as possible. We can't wait a year. Maybe we could wait 4 months, but we can't wait a year, those kinds of things. So that's a big difference.
Anything to add?
I do have something to add real quick. So just something that's different from orchestral auditions, and to tie in everything we're talking about. Matt mentioned it earlier. We are at the mercy of our buildings. Sometimes if no one is working that day, I can have a big warm-up room, a little like medium-sized hall, and make sure everyone gets a practice room. Sometimes it's a busy day and everyone is doing something, and so I only have practice rooms. And so we're just kind of at the mercy of our building. Sometimes we can use the nicer, bigger room. Sometimes we have to use the small, drier room because that's all that's available that day with all the concerts and rehearsals happening. But we are, I'm sure people listening to this have heard this before, but I can really tell you, being on the other side, we are really trying to hire people. We really want someone that can just play these basic things, play the instrument, play in time, have a beautiful sound, play in tune. It's musical. We're not listening like, they missed a note and I'm not going to vote for them. We really are looking for just someone that would fit in the section. Like, we really want to hire someone. So going into it, that's where the panel is thinking about.
Yeah, everyone just wants you to do well, and
Sure.
it's kind of like the first time I sat on a panel, or I ran the audition with Chris. I just I got that warm feel like, it's proctoring. I just want this person to do well. Like rooting for everyone. I'll put a Post-it note on there saying like, you got this, kind of a thing. Like the panel just wants to advance and have a hard decision. We can't hire based on perceived talent, so people just have to kind of show it. They have to own it. Unfortunately, sometimes there's a no hire, or we're looking for a very specific thing. Like, I know I was talking to Brent in the Marine Band. He's someone who is working with us at military trumpet jobs. And he was saying that they're looking for someone with commercial ability, So there's a lot of aspects. Everyone, like, each spot has a different role. There are different needs of different ensembles. And, I think that if you come in there and just try to play the way you do, and you're honest with it, and you have a good day and things happen, like it's sometimes it's for the best, sometimes it's not for the best, but you want to be a good fit as well. You want to, feel like you belong and you could do that job very well as well.
Yeah. Piggybacking off of both of those great points by Chris and Kevin. The topic of no hire auditions comes up, and every organization has had an audition where they end up at the end of the process not hiring somebody. I remember being on the other side of that when I was taking in auditions, and that used to really tick me off, honestly, when they wouldn't hire somebody. I'm like, oh yeah, none of us are good enough. I can tell you now that I've been sitting in the chair I've been sitting in for so long and running auditions, the last thing in the world the organization wants is for a no-hire audition. It means they have to start the process all over again. And if we're hiring for that position, we probably need that person yesterday. So we're really looking to hire. We want you to come and play your best. And we want somebody to come in and wow us and make it an easy decision, to be honest. But and the other thing is, just when it comes to auditioning for military bands, don't have any preconceived notions about what we're looking for. I think Kevin said, play the way you play. Yes, play the way you be the best representation of you when you come to the audition. Don't try to think like that we're looking for this, that, or the other thing. We're looking for the best possible musician we can hire. So if you come in and play great, we're going to love it. So, don't worry about trying to fit in with whatever a preconceived notion of a military band sound is. Just play the way you play. And if you're a really solid instrumentalist and good musician, you're going to be in the running.
Yeah, that's great advice. Just a great conversation overall, too. I was going to ask about what kinds of things do the committees listen for? What separates players that would advance and players that don't advance? But I feel like we kind of just covered it to a greater extent, what types of things they're looking for. Kevin, did you have something you wanted to add? Because I have one more question before we do kind of final thoughts, but if you want to jump in.
Yeah, the do's and don'ts. So I have done all of these things. Don't do them. I made it to the finals of an Army band audition. So I auditioned 4 times. I won it the 4th, and this is over a span of 12, 13, 14 years. I auditioned for the Army band. So don't think that, if you take an audition once or twice, it's not going to, for the band, like, okay, this is just not the right fit. Just keep trying. And I was in a different place in each one of those times that I auditioned. Don't play Rifle Regiment on an E-flat trumpet. It's going to not work out the way you want it to. I did that, and that was a mistake. Just these are the small things that really kind of make a bit of a difference. And the last thing I want to say is the section playing. That I've seen that go, really change panels' minds with how amiable you are. Like really think when you're playing with other people, look at the different trumpets they're playing and really, try to tune with them, try to adjust. That's a big part of what we do is playing in a large section. So thinking about that.
Can you guys mention, since you're trumpet players, like, do they have to play it on B flat? Do they have to play it on C? Those questions that we normally get. Yeah,
for our auditions, and we really try to make it so that you can play everything on either a B flat or C trumpet. And really, we've been aiming more and more to just make it so that you could conceivably play everything on a B flat trumpet. Most don't choose to do that. Most would choose to mix B flat and C trumpet, maybe marches and bugle calls on B flat trumpet. If we have the Aretunian concerto on there, B flat trumpet. But a lot of the orchestral excerpts that we put on there, it's kind of a natural fit for most players to play it on C trumpet. So a mix of B flat and C. And then, occasionally, especially if there's a high excerpt that might lay well on an E flat trumpet, some in the heroes, the orchestral part, not the band part that's written down a step, that might lie well on an E flat or D trumpet. That's fine. I mean, you can, somebody asked me one time, can I, this excerpt sounds great on rotary trumpet. And I was like, okay, I'm sure it does, but we're an American military band. We're never going to play rotary trumpet here. So I think that it's considerations like that. Keep it simple, and don't overthink the instrumentation is what I would say.
Good. Yeah. Are you cool if we kind of roll into some final thoughts, or I'm good. I just thought it might be kind of nice. We'll go Chris, Matt, Kevin.
What are my final thoughts?
I think just final thoughts are something like, is there something we haven't covered that you really wanted to say, or just sort of like a wrapping up thought about why you think this topic is important, or what you might say to somebody who comes to you and says, I'm considering, you already kind of made a pitch for that at the beginning of why it would be good to do like what has your life been like as someone who's been a part of a military band? Any kind of things like this, to just for some final thoughts that could wrap this up.
Okay, so final thoughts for me. So two things I would recommend. I would recommend this position to anybody. It's for me, it's a really fun job. I play in the ceremonial band, which means I do a lot of military funerals, but I also, every day is different, and I have a lot of amazing different musical opportunities. I get to play in the Herald Trumpets, so I get to play concerts with John Williams. I've done LA Phil, just different symphonies, and traveled a lot. It's something that's really cool. Generally, I have nights and weekends free. I have a singing church gig. I play a lot of trombone, so I get to play a lot. I get to do whatever I kind of want to. If I want to play in a quartet, I want to play in a brass ensemble. I get to play in the concert band whenever they need, someone to sub in. So I have a lot of opportunities, and I kind of make it for myself what I want to do. So I'm very happy with it. And I also want to mention usarmyband.com. If this comes out before February 26th and 27th, we do have a trumpet audition. And you guys are lucky that there's like a trumpet audition every year, everywhere. My first 2 years in the band, we hired 3 trumpets. And then the next year, another audition hired another 3 trumpets. So please, you can apply by February 12th for the Army Concert Band. But I like to tell people, just keep an eye on our website, because we have so many vacancies, and every year it's a new one. It seems like every year there's a trumpet audition. So
there is, yeah.
Matt,
yeah, I've been in the band a little over 14 years, and I've never regretted the decision for taking the audition or joining the band. Like Chris, I've had a lot of opportunities both in and outside of the band. DC is a great area for music, and I've been fortunate enough to do a tremendous amount of freelancing while I've been in the band. And I find my job with the ceremonial brass in the Air Force to be extremely meaningful. Playing taps in Arlington National Cemetery is maybe one of the most important things a trumpet player can do. And I've played on the National Memorial Day concert taps there. I probably got a larger audience than most trumpet players ever get in one show. The opportunity, the variety of music, quintets, quintet tours. We have a Air Force band quintet on tour right now. So just the variety of chamber music, orchestral settings, brass band, you name it. We have guys that go over and sub with the Airmen of Note. If you got some jazz chops, those guys are amazing. So it's a diverse career, and there's just tremendous opportunity. And if you Google search United States Air Force band auditions, you'll see not only my band, but you'll see all Air Force band jobs listed there. And of course, you can always, all those jobs also get advertised on Musical Chairs and Audition Cafe. And
us too,
if the timing of the audition works out, the Union paper. But sometimes it's tough to get in there just because you've got to get your ducks in a row a month in advance. But people that advertise with that organization know. Mm-hmm. And the other two things I'd say just about in general about auditions, I'm stealing this stuff from multiple teachers, including a colleague and friend of mine for a long time, Tom Couples. Play the way you play and be the best representation of yourself. And it's not a fluke if you win an audition. It's kind of a fluke where you win an audition. If you're a good musician and you prepare well and you put your nose to the grindstone, don't, believe in yourself and know that the hard work is going to pay off. If you have a bad audition, shake it off and apply for the next one. Keep your nose to the grindstone and keep working hard, and good things will happen.
Yeah. How about you, Kevin?
Well said, guys. I going to reiterate the same stuff there. It's a journey, these auditions. I've taken so many auditions. I'm sure Ryan, Matt, Chris, you all have. You have to fail to succeed. And, it's just shake it off when it doesn't work out, assess what happened and kind of keep going, and try to stay positive. We just want everyone to do well, play well. People are rooting for you. This is a really meaningful job. Some of the most amazing things I've ever done, people I've met, played for, the choose your own adventure aspect of this. I've created a bunch of groups. Say I'm a Jewish trumpet player. I created a klezmer group. It started out as a funny video where we lifted a drummer up on a chair. And then, now I ended up, this past holiday season, we ended up playing for the vice president's Hanukkah party and the president's Hanukkah party, and, ended up meeting the vice president and sitting right next to, it's just amazing, very meaningful. I also play with the Herald trumpets. There are opportunities for trumpet players in my band to play with the concert band or the blues or, quintet. There's a lot of quintet missions that, are jobs that we all have a chance to play that all happen at the same time, and they need multiple quintets. We've done a lot of touring. One of the cool things that we did this year was we played for we went to San Francisco and played for, what event was that, Chris?
Asian Pacific Economic Conference.
And that was so cool. We ended up, we were cool. At the Museum of Art. We were up on the balcony there, and we played for all the dignitaries as they walked in with the Herald. The official presidential fanfare ensemble. So it's a lot of meaningful, very cool things that I'll always remember and feel good about.
Well, I can say my takeaway is that grass is always greener, but every time I talk to people with military band jobs, I get a little bit envious, right? It's just, I know what my life is like, and I know what things are great and what struggles I have and all those types of things. And it's something that I don't know when I was really heavily auditioning that I was looking at in the way that all of you are describing it. And so, I'm happy with where I'm at, but I also feel like, sometimes you feel like you missed out on something cool because you just didn't know what it was. So I'm grateful that you took the time to share with me and anyone listening what this is all about, and to hopefully give some really practical advice about what auditions are and how to be more successful in it. Kevin, I don't know if you want to sort of finish it out and take us out.
I just wanted to give a special thanks to Chris, Matt, and Ryan, especially Ryan. So every time, I recently played a week with Ryan in Alabama Symphony, and it was, a huge blast. He's a wonderful trumpet player, and just every time I get together with you, I feel super inspired with ideas, projects, collaborations, and you inspired me to make my own podcast and this episode actually. So I really like a sincere, meaningful thank you to all of you and Ryan. And then I just want to say, check us out at www.militarytrumpetjobs.com. Check out our YouTube, our Instagram. We have a bunch of videos, probably of every single excerpt you could find, collaborating with a wonderful educator, orchestral player, military band trumpet player, and there's play-alongs. It's a free resource with information about military bands, military entrance processing, MEPS basic training, lots of other interviews. But thank you for tuning into our very first podcast episode of Military Trumpet Jobs.
Bye.
All right, thanks.